Hey guys, in today's video we're going to be getting rid of these useless drum brakes and converting it to a rear disc brake setup. If you're new here, welcome to the channel and don't forget to subscribe. Hey! Like 10 birds just flew into my garage. So in order to complete this conversion, you're going to need parts. My parts came out of a 2005 Jeep Liberty. Now you can also do this conversion by getting your parts out of a Jeep ZJ, but the nice thing about the Liberty is it already has a Chrysler 8 1/4 in it, so you don't have to do any more modifications than you need. The ZJ has the Dana 35, and the hole in the backing plate just isn't quite big enough, so you will have to do some grinding on it. If you want to avoid that grinding, you can do what I did and get all your parts out of a Jeep Liberty. Basically, everything you're going to need is everything that attaches on the outer ends of the axle, as well as some new brake lines and brake pads. So the parts I got out of the junkyard, I just removed the bolts for the backing plate, popped it off, kept it all together, and purchased it as a whole. It comes with my backing plate assembly, all the hardware on the inside for the parking brake. I also got the rotor from that, as well as the brake calipers. Now you can purchase all of these parts new if you want to. Me personally, I am balling on a budget, so I went with all junkyard parts. I'm just going to try to clean them up the best that I can. Now in addition to those parts, I went ahead and got me some new brake lines because we are going to need some flexible lines on the rear end, which I'll show you in just a minute. As well as you're going to need to change the spring in your proportioning valve. Some people don't do it, some people do. I'm going to go ahead and change mine, and I went ahead and got it out of a ZJ that did have the disc brakes because the one out of the Liberty just didn't seem quite right. So let's go ahead and hop over there and start disassembling what I already got. So first off, we need to start with the axles removed. If you want some detailed information on how to remove the axles, you can go ahead and check out this video right over here where I break down the complete removal process. With the axles removed, we will be able to access everything we need to access in here. Now the only thing that we're going to be reusing from this brake setup is our parking brake cable. Now we are going to be using the original hard brake lines, but we are going to be modifying them just a little bit. I'll go over that more when the time comes, but for now we're going to focus on disconnecting the brake cable and removing our backing plate. Now, I don't know how well you can see everything in here, but right here is our brake cable assembly. Our brake cable comes over here and it attaches back over here. So in order to access all of this easier, I'm just going to go ahead and start disassembling everything right here. I'm just going to start popping off all my springs and just kind of prying things out of the way. If you want, you can just start cutting springs. It doesn't really matter because we're not going to be reusing any of this other than that brake cable assembly. Now, as you can see right here, this is where the parking brake cable actually attaches. So you can get this spring to go back just a little ways, and you should be able to manipulate this to come out of that notch. Then once that's done, you've got these here. There's a lot of different ways you can take these off. Me personally, I usually just apply some pressure and then slowly push all the little tabs in with a screwdriver. Now once all that's removed, we're going to go ahead and remove these nuts on the studs right here. All you should have to do is just zip them off. If you live somewhere where everything rusts quite a bit, I would recommend soaking these with some PB Blaster or pouring some ATF on there so it can seep in, waiting a day, and then removing them. Now you want to make sure you save these nuts because we're going to be reusing these studs. Now I was a little bit concerned about ruining these studs when I pulled mine apart. So I had some at the ready already that I pulled out of my donor vehicle. Now with all that removed, we want to make sure that we disconnect our brake line. Don't forget to disconnect the brake line before you knock this off. Go ahead and disconnect it, and then this should just pop right off. And with that disconnected, It should just pop right off. If it doesn't pop off, don't be afraid to hit it with a BFH. So with everything out of the way, it is the perfect time to replace your seals and bearings. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, and I'll get right back with you guys. So because we're going from this hard line system to a caliper that requires this nice flexible line here, we're going to have to modify our original hard brake line. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to cut my old line right about here, I think, and then flare it with this fitting on it. So do not forget to slide that fitting on before you flare it. Otherwise, you get to do it again. So I'm going to try to cut this springy material here and kind of slide it out of the way the best I can. Take a tubing cutter, spin it around there, cut that, put my flaring tool on there after I put my fitting, and hopefully it all works out okay. If not, you guys will get to witness me fail unless I cut this out, which then you'll never see anything. The more I struggle with this, the more I realize I could have had it completely off the vehicle and finished by now. And a lot less headache.
Doing okay?
No. So I ended up having to buy a new flaring tool, but that's alright. I got it all set up here, and I'm just going to let it kind of sit right here for now and have my line connect to it. I can always move it to the other side if I need to. I'll probably end up welding a tab back here sometime in the future to kind of hold it all in place, but right now I'm just more focused on making it work. So now is the time to install the backing plate, but I want to make sure I clean this up really good, get rid of any rust that's there. I live in the desert, so it's not too rusty. I just want to make sure that I have a nice clean surface. And I'm going to take and jam my rag in here so I can keep any dirt and debris out of my axle tubes. Alright, and now it's time to install our backing plate. There was some blue Loctite on the ones that I pulled out, so I'm going to put some more blue Loctite on because this never needs to come off again. If it has to come off again, it's because I royally screwed something up. And if that's the case, then I'm not worried about having to cut these off. Now, I'm sure these nuts torque to a certain spec. I'm not 100% sure what that is. So I'm just going to slap her on in. Now because all this has been sitting, I'm going to go ahead and take some emery cloth to these pads here. It's just a parking brake. It just needs to bite. It doesn't need to be used all the time. So I'm not too worried about replacing these with new ones. But I do want to make sure that all this is pretty clean before I move any farther. With all that hard installed, it's time to slide in our axle. And then following the axle, time for our rotor. Now these rotors are slightly thicker than the drums. So if you go to put everything together and you find out that your studs are too short, you may need to install new studs. Now that all that's done, we can install our caliper with our new brakes. I'm not going to put my new brakes in here just yet because I'm going to go ahead and finish up some other things, but I am going to go ahead and install the caliper. And now it's time to focus on our brake lines. So I've been looking at how this brake hose is supposed to attach, and I realize that my brake line I managed to cut a little short. So I am going to have to replace my brake line, but that's alright. They're pretty cheap. I'll go pick one up today. So now all that leaves is the brake cable. It's supposed to come on in through here like so, and then somehow is supposed to attach right here. Now, I've heard that you can buy the complete brake cable assembly from a WJ, and it should fix this problem. You might have to modify it. I'm not 100% sure. What I do know is there's a company that makes brackets for these. I'll go ahead and leave a link down in the description below, but I'm going to try to mock something up and see if I can't make it work. So looking at the design of that adapter online, I went ahead and kind of mocked up this right here. I just cut it real fast. So I am going to order that kit. This is just to get me by in the meantime. So it should slip over just like so. Once this is through. Alright, that should work for temporary, and when those brackets come in, I'll just go ahead and swap those out. Alright, so the last step in the process involves this cap right here. This just removes, and there is a spring and a little insert piece in there, and it'll kind of look like one of these. Now the one on the right is out of the Jeep Liberty that I pulled all my parts from, and the one on the left is out of a Jeep ZJ. Now, depending on which forum you read, it'll say you need the shorter one, or it'll say you need the longer one, as well as there are plenty of people that say you don't need either one, you can just keep the one that you got in there already. So basically, that just tells me that everybody's experience is different. That's it. Don't forget to bleed your brakes and adjust your parking brake. And that is it. Not too incredibly complicated, relatively quick to do. I'll go ahead and leave links down in the description below for the new brake lines and some of the tools that I needed to complete this job. Everything else came out of a junkyard. I'll also leave a link down below for that bracket for the parking brake. That's going to be it for this video. If you liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. As always, don't forget to subscribe down there. You can check me out on Instagram at It's Project Venture, as well as the Tickety Talk at It's Project Venture. Thanks for watching.